When I say fossil fuels for Africa, I'm not just talking about energy. I'm also talking about the four pillars of modern civilization. We have cement and steel. Without cement and steel, we can't have proper buildings. We can't have roads. We can't have hospitals, schools, the good stuff. We can't have hydroelectric power without cement and steel. And of course, we can't have cement and steel without fossil fuels.
Hi, I'm Jason Ross, and I'm happy to be joined today by Jusper Machogu from Kenya. Hello, Jusper.
Hello, Jason.
Thanks for being with us. Jusper is the founder of Fossil Fuels for Africa. He's an energy activist, he's a farmer, he's many things, and we're really happy that he's here to speak with us today. So, Jusper, can you tell us a bit about your activities?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. So I am a farmer, small-scale farmer in rural Kenya. We grow tea, maize, beans. We also rear livestock, chicken and cattle. I'm also an agricultural engineer by profession, although I don't practice. But most importantly, I am fighting against neocolonialism that is just hidden behind climate change or green stuff, the environmentalists. And that is why I am the founder and chairman of Fossil Fuels for Africa, which is an organization legally registered in Kenya as an NGO. And we are growing. We are advocating for the use of our own resources for our own people, for our own economic prosperity.
That sounds pretty good. You mentioned that you're fighting against a form of neocolonialism. How is energy used as a form of neocolonialism today?
So I think it's safe to say that every other industry depends on energy. Like without energy is the industry that is driving the other industry. And without, we are back to 1800s. And most people don't realize that. So let me start from the beginning. So we have the UN, and these and other big environmental organizations like Greenpeace and Sierra Club and those other big environmental organizations, and they have managed to convince every other person out here that the biggest, and even governments. So now literally every other person is aware that the biggest challenge that humanity is facing today is climate change or global warming. And now that has got people scared, like we are gonna die humanity will be wiped out in 10 years, in 15 years, in 20 years. And now it's a big thing. Yeah. Every other person is scared. And according to the UN, because the UN is at the forefront, the UN is saying that, of course, climate change is being caused by burning of fossil fuels. That is what they are saying. So the path that they are proposing is humanity should stop burning fossil fuels if we want to stop climate change. And now that is the challenge. Without fossil fuels, we don't actually, if you look at our energy consumption today globally, last year 87% of our energy came from burning fossil fuels. The other year it was 84%, the other year 81 or 82. And if you go back to 1900s, 2000, about 80% was coming from fossil fuels. And people, we have to wake up. We have to wake up because the path that the UN is proposing is not realistic. It's not realistic at all. Yeah. And you can imagine that the UN is telling Africans who consume so little fossil fuels to not even to leapfrog. Don't burn fossil fuels. Go to solar and wind. So that is the kind of neocolonialism that I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's sort of the height of immorality to say to impose costs on people that aren't even under that framework aren't a major source of a problem. But even so, I mean, you can kind of contrast the difference between being more resilient to the climate or being able to bring more of what we might call the climate or the environment under our control compared to trying to prevent any changes to it. Like, if to the extent that we have water systems, to the extent that we have energy and we have refrigeration and all these other things, the environment comes to matter less and less. It's important, of course, but it seems like the focus instead of being there is from these institutions is just don't use energy. And so you have to ask, or well, I guess you do ask, and I ask, is the goal the environment, or is there a different goal here that's really making these people come up with these policies? Do you think it's an honest mistake? Do you call it neocolonialism? You think this is somewhat deliberate?
I do believe that at the end of the day, it boils down to ensuring that Africa never grows, we never flourish, we never
Yeah.
prosper. I do believe there are people or there are people or countries or governments who want Africa never to flourish because of course we will be scrambling for African resources, cobalt from Africa, um, our oil, our gas, our coal, our resources. So keeping Africa poor is by design. And it works for the UN because now, for very many years, it will be all about aid. We need aid to feed some people in Kenya or some
Mm.
people in Ghana. You know, it works for them.
I'd say. You brought up about how, who owns the resources that, it's much, there was a US document created in the 70s, the National Security Study Memorandum 200, written by Henry Kissinger, that
Yeah, yeah.
said that if populations grow, if countries become more developed, it's going to be a lot harder to get their resources easily and cheaply. So we should, development and population growth is bad. So
Yeah.
sometimes
And I think he mentioned Nigeria specifically.
yes, I think that was
Yeah,
one of them.
yeah.
So
So I
you
think it's
see,
by design.
yeah, because
Yeah,
if you think about the kinds of projects that would be extremely transformative in Africa, if I think of some of them, they're almost all opposed by these environmentalist groups. There was a plan to have a big development around the Lamu port, including some big coal plants, and I think did those get canceled? Did those groups succeed in sort of preventing that?
yeah, they succeeded.
Mm.
Hmm.
Then we got the East Africa crude oil pipeline. People are opposing that. There's the
Yeah, but
potential
that
for
one,
that one.
yeah, that one is ongoing, and I think I saw a tweet from the energy minister of Uganda today in the morning. They're
Mm,
going to have their first oil in something like May or June. So that is unstoppable, and that
that's
is a good
great.
thing for
That's
East
really
Africa.
great. That's really
Yeah,
great. Yeah. And some of the other bigger projects, like the potential to put the series of dams at Inga, the Grand Inga project on the Congo River, this would be an enormous amount of energy. But one of the reasons that the World Bank sometimes has given for not investing in it has been to say, well, it's an environmental problem. What will it
yeah,
do to the fish? And it's like, what about the people? Aren't the people the most important?
yeah. So those people don't really care about us. Those organizations. Oh, I forgot World Bank and IMF. Oh, those ones are the worst.
Hmm,
Because if you look at what the IMF has been doing in Africa, in various African countries, yeah, it's disturbing, especially now that we have in Kenya, because Kenya is one of those big countries in Africa, like economically. So we have our president is pro environment, like is those people who are concerned about the environment and climate change. And before he killed Gen Zs, he was given like those big platforms, if there is an environmental conference happening in Paris, he was going to be given a space to talk because he's one of those African presidents who's recognized when it comes to environmental conservation and those other stuff, shenanigans, climate change. So IMF was ordered our government to not. There is a time they told our government, if we're going to give you a loan, there are things that you have to do before we give you the loan. And one of those things was to plant trees. So we were told by the government on Monday, like it was on a Thursday, we were told on Monday we're going to have a national tree planting day. And you like, this is suspect. Like, where did that come from? So of course we later on came to we learned that it's the IMF that told the Kenyan government to do something for the climate. And it has been doing such stuff for a very long time. And if you look at Africa today, most people wouldn't want to invest in Africa when it comes to energy because World Bank, the UN, and IMF are all against investing in fossil fuel development. And of course, that is a bad thing. And by the way, I like to say that when I'm talking about energy, so there is a difference between energy and electricity. Most people whenever they hear energy or fossil fuels for Africa, they think electricity. Electricity is just a tiny bit of total energy production or consumption. And it's usually like 20%. So the rest of the energy, the rest is from, like, there are things that, say, agriculture. You can't electrify agriculture. There are things that you can't electrify. So I like to point that out.
So can you give, like, what are some examples of things that people are missing? If they think that energy is about electricity only, what are the other ways that we use energy that maybe people don't think about?
So the other ways that we use energy is, of course, transportation. Most vehicles. So when people hear transportation, they think me driving a car to the nearest town. We have trucking. Trucking is, I think, the biggest. It takes the biggest percentage when it comes to transportation. So food is getting transported. A lot of stuff, electronics from China, shipping, and all of that. So we have shipping, we have trucking, we have trains, we have, of course, now personal vehicles, and we have So when you look at those ones, we can electrify some of that, but others we can't electrify. If you're going to you can electrify your personal car. You can't electrify a train if you're going to transport heavy stuff. Yeah. But if it's just people, you can electrify that. You can't electrify trucks because they consume a lot of energy, a lot of fossil fuels, and batteries don't do it. You can't electrify agriculture. You can't electrify industrial heating. There are things that we just can't electrify. Let me put it that way. Yes.
And then a lot of other things people use, I mean, like cooking and things like this, being able to change the energy for heating or cooking from, biological materials or wood to natural gas or, gas canisters is, changes the quality of life. Yeah.
Yeah. And most people don't realize that Africa is basically burning wood, cow dung, charcoal, crop residue. That is what we are literally burning. And even at in my home, I'm using, if you can see behind there, that is a fireplace. I'm cooking something. So most people miss that picture. Africa, most of our energy, in sub-Saharan Africa, which is about 49 countries, almost 90% of our energy is coming from burning biomass. No industries, literally. No industries. If you go to places like the US, you realize that over 80%, maybe 75% to 80% of their energy is coming from banning fossil fuels. If you go to China, it's like 90%. If you go to Europe, it's over 70%. Their total energy is coming from burning fossil fuels. And worldwide last year, it was 87%, which is a big, big number. But in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, it's almost 90% from burning biomass. That is
Wow.
how we get our energy. And
Hmm.
that paints the perfect picture.
Hmm.
So when you look at Africa, we are really lagging behind because we are burning so little fossil fuels. We don't have we don't have much transportation. We don't have a lot of things. But then, man, it's just sad. It saddens me.
Well, it's so unjust, especially to present this as being something that's good for the future or caring about people. And people, I think maybe some people in the West are a little bit more distant from it and may not realize what the implications are of saying no fossil fuels. And so I hope people continue to hear your message because the impacts are
Yeah,
profound.
yeah. And the irony is the people telling us to not burn our fossil fuels are burning a ton of fossil fuels. And let me just give you an example.
Hmm.
Africa has got a population of 1.5 billion people today, 1.5 billion, and we're just burning 4 million barrels of oil per day. 4 million. The US, let me talk about China. China has got 1.5 billion people. They are burning about 16 million barrels of oil per day. 16 million. So that is a difference of 4 times. Yeah. Go to the US. The US has got a population of 330 million people. Million, not 1 billion. 330 million people. They're burning over 20 million barrels of oil per day. They
Hmm.
literally burn 20% of oil per day. Africa burns 4% of oil per day. So that is, but those are the people telling us Africans not to burn our oil or burn oil. You get the
Yeah.
irony. Yeah,
Yeah.
and another thing that I like to say, so that I paint the perfect picture. If you look at the amount of primary energy now, that is the total amount of energy. Primary energy is like energy before conversions. So like burning coal straight or burning diesel straight or gasoline straight, yeah, before converting it to electricity and using the electricity. So, okay. In 2015, if a person in the US would use, in 1 week, that person would use the amount of energy a person in Nigeria would consume in a whole year.
Mm.
1 week. Or if
Wow.
you went, yeah, if you went to somewhere like Uganda, that person, like, it will support that a Ugandan for 2 years. 1 week, 2 years in Uganda, 1 year in Nigeria.
Mm.
You get the picture. Electricity, the amount of, let me just use my family. My family uses about 12 to 16 units per units, so that is kilowatt hours of electricity per month. Because we bought an electric kettle, now we use about 20 units per month. That is a whole family. We are a family of 6 people. An American refrigerator is consuming 45 units per month. 45 units. When somebody in the developed country tells people like, Africans to not ban their fossil fuels, that is it's ironical. I think
Mm.
that is the best term to use. It's just ironical.
You know,
Yeah.
and it could be reflective. I think it reflects an overall paradigm of how people think the world should work. I mean, there's been, you know, in history, there have been many empires, and it's still there's still an imperial outlook today. I mean, the British, Britain's a small place, right? And they've had this, world-reaching empire. How did they do it? It was through control of finance. It was through ideological manipulation, organization, things like that. And we're still in this imperial era. We haven't really entered the new paradigm that Schiller Institute founder Helga Sepp-LaRouche talks about. Because if people around the world recognize that another person's growth isn't a threat, this is the
Yeah,
imperial way of thinking, right? If you get better, it's bad for me. And
yeah,
that's like the way a little child thinks. Oh, you got that? I'm angry. I want it too. Instead of adults say, "Oh, good. I'm glad you're benefiting. I
mm,
hope I benefit too. We can all grow together." It's not a competition in that way. I mean, most of the big kinds of growth that we can have it's not competitive. It could be cooperative. I mean, I think, I don't know what you think about the kind of, it sounds like there's really progress being made in waking people up to the climate scam. I think people, I know I can say in the US, it's becoming less of an issue compared to maybe 5 years
yeah,
ago, where everybody was screaming, "It's going to end. We're all going to be dead in 3 years." Maybe they're a little embarrassed because that didn't happen. um, but it's still an example of something that's really used to hold people back. So I guess what I'd want to ask you about is your vision for the world 50 years from now. Like what kind of paradigm would you like to see in the world? What would it be like in a couple of generations from a better perspective?
I think number one, I would say I wouldn't want to see humanity fighting. That is just at the top of my mind. I
Mm,
wouldn't want that because from back in 2007, we had post-election post-election war, like violence in Kenya, and I was partly, my family was affected partly, and I saw how people suffered, and I see from time to time my social media feed brings me whatever is happening in Gaza or Palestine, or doesn't matter. It's just war. Or even in South Sudan, even in Congo, you
yeah,
look at some of those videos and you just feel so sad. Like I most of the time don't want to see that. Yeah, because it just breaks my heart.
yeah.
So somebody dying somewhere because we have like a leader, politicians fighting, and you just say, "Oh, let me bomb your country, let me bomb your country," and you just bomb a whole country, and you kill people, you kill children, you kill women. I don't want to see that. So I hope in 50 years' time we won't be having that. Instead, we will be having people sitting down and discussing stuff amicably, like humans, not animals. So that is at the top of my mind.
Mm,
Number two, of course, it's what I'm fighting for: fossil fuels for Africa, our own resources for our own people, our own oil, our own coal, our own gas for our own people, for our own economic prosperity. 75% of our oil is going outside Africa, and it's powering industries in Europe or in the US,
mm,
especially Nigerian oil. 45% of our natural gas is going to also those other countries, and it's being banned to produce electricity. Sometimes it's used to produce synthetic fertilizer, urea, that is feeding the West and Asian countries. I would want our resources for our own people. I would want to see our natural gas being used in Africa to produce fertilizer, synthetic
mm,
fertilizer, urea, and we're going to have plenty of food for everyone. And even we can also feed Europe and the US, because we have the perfect climate, which is of course warm. Warm is good. Cold is bad. Yeah.
I agree. It's very cold here. I don't like it.
Yeah. Warm is good. Warm is good. And even for crops love it very warm. They love it warm. So I would want to see that. I would want to see South Africa banning its coal to produce electricity for their own people. They can industrialize much quicker, banning their own coal. The same for Zimbabwe. The same for Kenya. We have coal in Kenya, but we are not. Nobody in Kenya is talking about our coal. Nobody. We have oil in Kenya. Nobody's talking about it. And despite the fact that people say Museveni, the president of Uganda, is a dictator, he could be a dictator. But the thing I like about him is he's fighting for his own people. Uganda is going to see their first oil in this year, actually, and that is a good thing, despite the fact that environmental organizations, Western environmental organizations, disguised as Ugandan environmental organizations, were fighting. Stop EACOP, stop EACOP. They were, and the funny thing is, people like to take advantage of the disadvantaged, of the poor. Like if you're poor, somebody comes to you and they say, "Oh, Jasper, we will be giving you good money. We will be taking you to, we will be flying you through the world. You will be spending your time in five-star hotels. We will pay you in dollars or euros. The only thing you have to do is carry these posters up like this. You don't have to know what they're saying. And from time to time, we'll be giving you posters and we'll get you media interviews. The only thing you have to do is say yes.
Mm.
Of course, I'm a small scale rural farmer. I make like $1 a day. Sometimes I don't. Okay, so that is what most people in East Africa, um, they live on $1 a day. So when this person comes to them, they tell them, do that. Of course, they're going to say yes. And so
Mm.
that is what was happening in Uganda. People carrying posters saying stop EACOP or no EACOP or no fossil fuels eh, for Africa, no drilling oil. And some of those people, if you tell them, read what that poster says, they can't read it. But then they're
Mm.
just carrying it up. And now,
Wow.
anyway, yeah, so that is the kind of neocolonialism that I'm talking about. And also the UN is doing a lot of damage when it comes to fossil fuel development in Africa. And as I said earlier, World Bank and IMF are doing the same. They can't fund anything that is related to fossil fuels. If they're going to fund anything related to energy, they're going to fund solar turbines and no so, solar panels and wind turbines. So solar and wind, that is it. They're not going to fund uh, those other things. They're not going to fund fossil fuel development. And yeah, so
Right.
that is number two. So fossil fuels for Africa. Number one was no wars. Number two, fossil fuels for Africa. Uh do I have number three? Maybe our own social media platform, because
Mm.
yeah, that is the one thing that I've been really thinking about, because like right now you just open your Twitter and it's just whatever is happening in the US, it's displaying whatever is happening in the US, and you just say not interested, and another post comes, I mute Elon Musk 100 times, and he posts somehow, I don't know how, but somehow I keep on seeing his post, and the guy is just lying to the world. And that is the thing I don't like about um, capitalism. Like, we have very rich people, they can control a lot of stuff. They can buy platforms. Like, this is an app growing up, or getting organic uh, following or users. They say, oh, I have a lot of money that you guys cannot say no to. they buy the platform, and then they run it the way they want. So Elon Musk is telling the rest of the world that, apart from Africans, because Africans know whatever is happening in whatever Elon Musk is saying that is happening in South Africa is just lies, white genocide. Nothing like that is happening. I've been to South Africa a couple of times, and I can tell you nothing like that is happening. The only thing that I've seen happen in South Africa is Africans. This is a bit sensitive. Let me just say it. So if you go to Cape Town, a good example, the beautiful mansions that you're going to see in Cape Town are not owned by black people, Africans. That is, let me just say Africans. Of course, those big, beautiful houses are being owned. Most of them are owned by white people. And if you go to slums, they have a slum in Cape Town, or informal settlement. If you go to that informal settlement called Kailicha, you're going to find Africans there. Once you start moving away from Cape Town, from now the city, you're going to find big farms, 5,000 acres, 1,000 acres of land, 2,000 acres of land, 10,000 acres of land. Those are not owned by Africans. Most of that land is owned by white people. So whatever Elon Musk is saying is just, it's untrue. It's false. So I see a lot of stuff that, even as an African who lives in Africa, it disturbs me in a way. And I am sad to see how Twitter has turned out, because Twitter is the one place that I felt it. As much as there is freedom of expression, there are things that I would refer to as what is the word? Offensive. And I see that a lot nowadays. Anyway, so that apart, I think that those are the three things that I would want to see in 50 years' time. Or I wouldn't want to see in 50 years' time. Yeah.
That's great. Do you have time for a couple more questions?
Yeah.
Well, so the first one I wanted to ask was, when you were describing about how people get paid to join protests and things like this, it sounds like this is something that you definitely know about personally. Did they try to recruit you to this kind of activity?
No, they didn't try to recruit me, because I think they know that I am not for sale. Okay, so let me say this. Since I started Fossil Fuels for Africa, what I've been doing is I've been showing people how we live and how fossil fuels will transform our lives. So that is, like, I have shown people that. So there is no way all of a sudden Jasper is going to wake up and say, maybe EACOP is bad for us. No way. I think what they tried to do was they sent CNN. There was a guy from CNN who a while back interviewed me. I wouldn't refer to it as an interview. It was more of I can't find the word for it, but it was kind of,
Sometimes they're like prosecutions, like they're trying to prove you're guilty or something.
Yeah, something like that. So it was more of an attack, nothing like an interview. So the guy was asking, when you went to South Africa, who paid for your flights and hotel? I think that is it. And then at the end of the day, they said, I have received 9,000 USD from, in the 2 years that I've been operational, now heading to 3 years. So in those 2 years, they said, okay, in those 2 years, I had received 9,000 USD. And the thing that they forgot to mention was that 7,000, around $7,200 was for my from GoFundMe. I was supposed to go to school in the UK for my master's degree. and we set up a GoFundMe. We got around $7,200 or $7,300. So literally, what they were saying was, I got like 1,500 from outside. Like I got 1,500 from the oil industry. Yeah, in the years that I had been operational, and so that that is, I think, that is the kind of thing, the CNN attack. And then the other thing, I think I got cancelled due to me saying fossil fuel for Africa, because I was supposed to go to school and everything was fully sorted out. School fees paid, accommodation paid, flights booked, everything literally was done. So I had like 1 to 2 weeks before my flight to the school, and all of a sudden they said, "Oh, Jasper, we are sorry to say that we can't have you this year. You should try next year," something like that. They never
Wow.
any explanation to why they cancelled me. But then I do
Wow.
think it's because they realized that, oh, this person is saying fossil fuel for Africa, or is saying climate change is not an existential threat. Yeah. So other than that, I wouldn't say. So you get my point. What I haven't got offers from environment organizations. What I've got is attacks. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I can see why. Well, let me ask you another question. You'd mentioned how the World Bank or the UN SDGs call for Africa, they call it leapfrogging, to leapfrog beyond fossil fuels. But the technologies that they propose leapfrogging to are actually very old. I mean, windmills were wonderful 500 years ago. It was a tremendous new technology.
Yeah.
Today, if you look at areas that are very hard to deliver energy to. So let me give one example. It might seem unique, but I think it's an important one, which is space travel. You can't have a windmill on a rocket. You can have a solar panel on a rocket, and it'll help propel you a little bit. We use chemical fueled rockets. But if we discovered that there was a comet on its way to the Earth, an asteroid, it's coming in, it's going to hit us in 3 years, we need to get out there and blow it up or something. The only way you're going to get a rocket there that quickly is if you've got a nuclear engine. And the power of nuclear reactions, it's just, per nuclear reaction, per fusion reaction, it's 1,000,000 times more energy than the combustion of, say, natural gas or something like this. So to me, it was always a very suspicious thing that these groups saying, "Oh, we got to protect the environment, we got to stop CO2." They don't talk about nuclear, or they used to always just say, "No, no, it's bad, it's unsafe, we can't do it, shouldn't have it." Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah. I think what I will say is Africa should use what they have um, in plenty first, because before we can think of the other advanced technology like nuclear. We can have hydroelectric dams, and that way we can generate electricity from HEP and use in our homes. That is the easiest. We have geothermal. In a good example is in Kenya. We have plenty of geothermal potential. We should tap to that first before we can think of nuclear. Number three, I would say, of course, our own coal. We should be burning our coal for electricity before we can think of nuclear. Nuclear is quite expensive to build
Sure.
in Kenya. So I have done the calculations for Kenya, and that applies to most African countries apart from I would say maybe Uganda. Uganda is quite a country, and Tanzania, because Tanzania has got so little corruption. So let me just say for Kenya, for hydro and geothermal, it's usually about, like, if you want to build a power plant and you want to build it using geothermal or hydro, it's usually about 2,500 to 3,600 USD per kilowatt. Yeah. For solar and wind without now backup, now that is the problem. Without backup, it's usually around 3,000 USD on average. For nuclear, it's about 5,000 to 6,000 USD per kilowatt, and that is quite expensive. The thing with nuclear is electricity for the time, 95% of the time, or even 100% of the time. For solar and wind, it's usually about 25% of the time. Actually, it's far less because we won't be having offshore wind turbines in Kenya, so less than that, maybe 15% to 20% of the time. For hydro and geothermal can do like 95%, hydro can do 75% of the time. So I wouldn't want Africans to settle for expensive electricity sources. I would want us to do the cheapest first before we can think of nuclear.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, just a couple more then, if I could. You brought up hydro, Ethiopia, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. This is multiple gigawatts of power. And you're talking about the issues of the World Bank financing. I believe that at least 90% of the expense for that dam project came directly from people in Ethiopia, with the rest being from, I think, some banks and maybe some loans from one of the manufacturers of the turbines. This is, I guess to me that shows the power of being able to harness domestic resources if it's organized appropriately, and you can finance, significant projects. Do you think that's a model that other countries could look to?
Yeah, I think that is what we should try to do throughout Africa. We can fund those projects, only that our funds are getting mismanaged by politicians. In Kenya, we have the president himself mismanaging our funds. You hear from time to time they say a lot of money, like, I don't know, 1 billion. 1 billion divided by 100 is like, say 10 million USD is used every day. Around 10 million USD is used every day in State House, in our now White House, to buy stuff like donuts, tea. So let me just say that we have
Wow.
a ton of mismanagement of funds in Africa, and we're just allocating our funds to doing stupid stuff like paying politicians and member of parliament, senators, governors, all of that stuff. Like, it's just stupid stuff. And that is why I kind of like what's happening in Tanzania. Tanzania is very serious with development. They have SGR, they have the normal trains, they have the good things that literally every other African country would have. And the good thing is they have, I wouldn't say they don't have corruption, but then their corruption is on the low. We can do a lot of good things in Africa with proper management. Yeah.
Good. Well, I think we ought to maybe draw this interview towards a close for today. Is there anything else that you'd like to make sure that our viewers hear from you?
I think that is it. Only that I left out a few points out. I think when I say fossil fuels for Africa, I'm not just talking about energy. Of course, we have talked about energy quite a lot. I'm also talking about the four pillars of modern civilization. We have cement and steel. Without cement and steel, we can't have proper buildings. We can't have roads. We can't have hospitals, schools. The good stuff. We can't have hydroelectric power without cement and steel. And of course, we can't have cement and steel without fossil fuels. So those are fossil fuel products, literally. So steel, cement, plastics, and then fertilizer. For plastics, I think the best way to say it is modern life begins in maternity wards covered with plastics, and it
Mm.
ends in ICU covered with plastics. That is just how modern life is. And literally every other thing, be it cars, be it your household items, clothing, literally every other thing is made up of plastics. Yeah. And then when it comes to fertilizer, uh, Africa is one of those countries that is consuming so little fertilizer, which is about less than 5% actually globally. And if you look at how much we get from our farms, it's so little compared to, say, an American farmer. So synthetic fertilizers are going to be a game changer, a big one. Yeah. So that is for the four pillars of modern civilization. I talked about energy. For agriculture, it's going to be a game changer because um, fossil fuels, they enable us to manufacture farm machines. So plastics and steel, of course, those are fossil fuel
Hmm.
products. So we want the farm machines to amplify and expand our capabilities, and they're going to do that in a big, big way. They have done that for Americans. They have done that for Asians, Indians. They have not done that for Africans. Farm mechanization is at 2% in Africa compared to 95% in the US, 90% in Europe, 75% in China, etc. etc. Africa is just at 2%. We need to mechanize our farm operations. Yeah, I already talked about fertilizer. Greenhouses and irrigation is going to be also a game changer for agriculture in Africa. And of course, most of that can't happen without fossil fuels. The plastic sheets, the plastic piping, steel and plastic pumps, you name it. They're literally we can do a lot with and the last one is value addition. We should stop exporting stop exporting raw products to the
Mm.
Western and Asian countries. We should value add our products before exporting them. That way we can employ our youths. We can create job employment, and then that way also we're going to retain value. Because why are we doing that? Why is Nigeria exporting their oil to the US for refining? Why can't we do it in Africa? There are very many other things that we are exporting. We are exporting cobalt for battery production, copper, you name it, platinum,
Right.
all of the good stuff, gold. So our answer is fossil fuels. Without fossil fuels, we are not able to industrialize. We cannot uh, power agriculture. We cannot better our agriculture. We cannot do much without fossil fuels that we have in plenty.
Sounds like fossil fuels have an effective champion in you. Would you like to share with us, if our viewers would like to know more about you and follow your work, where's the best place to find you on the internet?
I would say Twitter, but then okay. Let me just say Twitter for now because the other app that I want to say, there is an app called Upscrolled. I think I'm going to use it a lot. Hopefully, it will be a change. It will be a substitute for Twitter. So Upscrolled, you can always find me Jasper Machogu on Twitter, on subs. I'm on Substack, but then I don't use it a lot because it's mostly for writing. I don't like to write. Yeah, so Twitter and YouTube. Yeah, so
Okay.
Jasper Machogu, YouTube, Upscrolled, and Twitter.
Okay. Good. We'll put those in the video description so you can follow Jusper there. So thank you very much. I think our viewership will really learn a lot from having your voice and your thoughts and your reflections here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.